Hey, how's y'all doing again? This is your host, Mr. Blows Your Minds, and welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of YouTube. First and foremost, I want to say what's good to my fam who should happen to be in the house. Again, thank each and every one of you, whether you're here live or when you catch on the replay. Thank you for clicking on the video. New subscribers as well. Welcome to the Black Minds News family. Again, we've been in the business since 2012. Based on the suppression and make sure you can't be in the search engine. Well, we not in the business for that. You just have to come by and catch what we do, like what we do, you know we do, subscribe, share, and all that other good stuff. Passerbys, if you happen to pass by due to the thumbnail, the title of the show, welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of YouTube. We always have a grand opening over here. Happen to see something that make you feel some kind of way. Remember that the motto of the show is, the truth don't need no partner. So, as again, this will be take 3, right? This is take 3 of the show because the show I just did just seconds ago, well, guess what happened? Come to find out it was unlisted, right? So it's always some little technical things that seem to be, you know, things that happen. So anyway, I'm going to hurry and get this show on the road here. So it means I'm going to have to go back again because the title, I don't want it to be clickbaitish, because this is about the grand jury release audio of the Glock caliber 40 or the 40 caliber Glock 22. The reason why that's important is because this is going to substantiate the night of March 13th, according to what had been told by articles, news stories, is that Kenneth Walker, being the boyfriend of Breonna Taylor, is shooting first. And that his shot that he said of a warning shot supposedly is striking Sergeant John Mattingly in the left upper thigh. That being the reason why they feel that the police officers are justified in the actions that end up leading the death of Breonna Taylor. And so, based on audio I just heard recently today, and there's an article as well that I'm going to have to read again for the third time, right? For the third time I'm going to have to read this, is because it's connecting to the information you're about to hear. Because that is really the crux of what is the initiator, in my eyes, of my assessment, of what took place on the night of March 13th. Did Kenneth Walker shoot at the police, or as he stated, it was a warning shot, and that warning shot, did it initiate? And if it comes to be determined that he's not the initiator, right, then the story that they're about to relay that came out through the grand jury's releasing may put another thought in your mind as to what took place and the possibility of a major cover-up, right? So let me give you what the article came out and said here. I'm going to go ahead and do that and show you right here. It'll be the third time I have to read this, but they have to do it anyway, right? To get it right. So, fired LMPD detective believed Kenneth Walker was firing an AR-15 night of Breonna Taylor's raid. And let me say that again. It says fired LMPD detective believed Kenneth Walker was firing AR-15 night of Breonna Taylor's raid, right? Now, the article that I'm going to read from is going to say the same thing. The only difference is they put his name, Brett Hankerson, fired LMPD detective thought Kenneth Walker was firing an AR-15. Now, again, should I show you the gun? Let me show you the gun of Kenneth Walker. Let's see if I got the gun. Do we got the gun? Show the gun, sir. See if we got the gun and let the gun be seen, right? Let the gun be seen. So we can see. So, okay, how we have to ask the question, right? If that's the gun, if that is the gun that Kenneth Walker fired, based on what he said here, right? Let's see, then we got that. Based on supposedly the detective saying the night of March 13th, his recollection and what he assumed is that there was an AR-15 the night of what took place. So once again, let me go ahead and read this article for you real quick before we go ahead and get into the crux of this. It says Louisville, Kentucky. Public has never heard from former LMPD Detective Hankerson about the deadly raid on Breonna Taylor's apartment on March 13th until now. More than a dozen recordings of approximately 15 hours of grand jury testimony were released Friday in the high-profile case. Taylor, a 26-year-old healthcare worker, was shot dead in the race, sparking national outcry, urging police reform, and more than 120 days of protests across Louisville. Hankerson was fired in June and indicted last month for blindly firing 10 rounds from outside of Taylor's apartment. As officers were using a battle ram to get into Taylor's apartment, her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, fired what he would later call a warning shot. Thinking intruders were breaking in, Sergeant John Malley was struck in the leg and the raid turned chaotic. Hankerson shared his account on the raid during a grand jury hearing 10 days later. Quoted, "I returned fire from the angle that I believe Walker's still to be shooting from because I could still see muzzle flashes and I could hear the fire, almost like automatic weapon firing. What in my mind, I was certain it was an AR-15, Hankerson said. I now had a shot where I had my own option to return fire, and I did that to the muzzle flashes. And I want to be specific about this. I had already seen where the threat was, saw where he was positioned. The warrant was one of several LMPD officers were serving that night. As part of a larger narcotic investigation, Taylor and ex-boyfriend named Jamarcus Glover and a man named Adrian Walker were named on the warrant that led the officer to her apartment. A short time earlier, Glover was taken into custody during a separate raid at another location. Hankerson described what happened after Malley was shot. Quoted to saying, "Sergeant Malley is down. Their eyes are pulling him, a lot of commotion. Didn't know if they were getting to him." Then he paused. "Didn't know if John was down and they couldn't get his body out," he said. "All I could hear was firing, see flashing. I thought they were just getting executed because I know they were helping John. John had said, 'I'm hit, I'm down.' Gunfire intensifying." Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron team presented his case over several days to the grand jury, which last week handed up 3 indictments on first-degree wanton endangerment charges for Hankerson. Charges are related to the bullets that went into Taylor's neighbor's apartment. Nobody was charged directly in Taylor's death. Malley and Detective Myles Cosgrove, who also fired their weapons that night, were cleared of wrongdoing. Quoted, "I'm confident that once the public listened to the recordings, they will see that our team presented a thorough case to the Jefferson County grand jury," Cameron said in a statement Friday. "Our presentation followed the facts and the evidence, and the grand jury was given a complete picture of the events surrounding Miss Taylor's death. On March 13th, while it is unusual for a court to require the release of recordings from grand jury proceedings, we comply with the order rather than challenging it so that the full truth can be heard." Hankerson also said that when he talked to Walker moments after the shooting, Walker allegedly told him that Taylor had fired her gun. Walker said, "My girlfriend is dead in the apartment," Hankerson recalled. "I mean, my mind was like, did something already happen? Did he kill his girlfriend?" He said, "No, she was shooting with her 9mm. He said she was the one that shot at us." Some of the other key takeaways so far. A detective named Herman Hall was asked if drugs, money, and paraphernalia were recovered from Breonna Taylor's apartment. The answer to that is no. Hall said. Officers did not go forward with executing the initial search warrant that they had for Breonna Taylor's apartment. Hall's statements align with a claim made by Jamarcus Glover, the former Taylor boyfriend, who also a convicted drug trafficker. In a recorded jailhouse phone conversation just hours after the raid, Glover told an associate believed to be Adrian Walker that homicide came straight on the scene and they went to packaging Bree and they left. Hall also was asked why the officers involved in the raid were not wearing body cameras. I can't answer that, he said. I don't know why body cameras weren't used for that. Hall was asked if there was a formal plan between the 7 officers as they made approach to serving the warrant. I'm not aware of one, Hall said. Greg Wolf, a detective with the Attorney General office, testified about Taylor's autopsy report. He said 2 of the bullets that struck her, one in the abdomen and one on her left upper breast, did not exit her body. Wolf said the wounds to her upper left breast also injured her lungs and was the one that killed her. Was also ruptured an artery that caused some severe bleeding, he said. Wolf said Taylor suffered a wound to her left lower thigh that exited actually her left rear upper thigh or side of her thigh. Wolf added that Taylor also was shot in the arm, in the thigh, and twice in her right foot. The medical examiner found a projectile in her heel of her right foot, Wolf said. Wolf also testified about Madley's injury. He was shot once in the leg in the initial moment of the raid. Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, fired what he would later call a warning shot when he thought intruders, not officers, were breaking into the apartment. He was charged with attempted murder of a police officer, but the charge was eventually dropped. Walker's attorney recently claimed the bullet that struck Madley did not exit Madley's body. It could have been the results of a friendly fire. But Wolf, a detective for nearly 40 years, testified that the bullet did exit Madley's body, adding that it was fired from a Glock 43X, which he said was used by Walker that night. The 40 caliber Glock 22 is the standard service pistol for LMPD officers. Okay? Now that is the story that they published coming out of the, I think it's out of WYM, and what is that? What is that initials for? I know it's WYMT. That's who published that particular story. As you see on your screen there, and Kentucky did this one as well. So, what that being said is, the question becomes, what Kenneth Walker said that night that he fired a warning shot, which the gun was recovered, as you've seen, I just showed you, of the 9mm. But then you're going to hear this testimony from the trial of the grand jury and listen to what he says, but be mindful that the person who is going to be questioning him is trying to get you to think something else. Stay focused on what he's saying, not what the person questioning him. Because he's going to act as if like he didn't know what he was saying. But there's a reason for that, right? So anyway, let me go ahead and get ready to get into this. Before we get into that, I'm a man on the corner with a cup in my hand asking you to do a little something before we get started. So we do that, and then we're going to get right into the dissertation of what was heard or released from the grand jury's testimonies or the case pending, I guess. So check this, I'll be right back.
What are you?
I'm black and beautiful.
What is your nationality?
My nationality is Afro-American.
Suppose I had some money in my pocket. Suppose I gave you $1 to say that you're an American Negro. This is money now. Money talks. Money talks. This dollar And if you don't say it, you don't get it. You're an American Negro, aren't you?
No.
You won't have any money. You know you need money, don't you?
Yes.
You need money to live, don't you?
Yes.
All right. All you have to say, Leon, is that you're an American Negro. Aren't you an American Negro?
They're an independent body. If they wanted to make an assessment about different charges, they could have done that. But our recommendation was that Mattingly and Cosgrove were justified in their acts and their conduct.
One officer was charged with reckless endangerment for firing wantonly into the apartment, but the failure to charge anyone with killing Breonna Taylor has led to about a week's worth of protests here in Louisville. More than 200 people arrested and 2 police officers shot and wounded. Right now, the governor has said he has lifted the curfew and there are no plans to activate the National Guard. Harris, back to you.
Assessment about different charges. They could have done that, but our recommendation, different charges, they could have done that, but our recommendation, 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 recommendation.
We good now? All right. I told you this morning we're going to call Detective Greg Wolf. Detective Wolf, before you testify, would you be sworn in by the foreperson?
You do solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
State your name for the record, Detective Wolf.
Greg Wolf.
Where are you currently employed, Detective Wolf?
I'm employed with the Department of Criminal Investigations at the Office of the Attorney General.
And briefly, what kind of work do you do?
We do statewide investigations, public corruption, cyber investigations, and drug investigations throughout the state of Kentucky.
Tell the ladies and gentlemen, Jerry, how long have you been in law enforcement?
I've been in law enforcement 38 years, started in 1982.
Has that all been in the Commonwealth of Kentucky?
Yes, sir.
Now, you've been working with myself, Barbara, Rewell, and Alex over the last several weeks, assisting us in this investigation on this case. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
We're going to be talking about some forensics, some of the autopsy findings, things of that sort.
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's go first to the autopsy.
Yes, sir.
If you had an opportunity to review those files before preparing for your testimony this morning?
I have.
All right. Can you approach, if you could, for a moment? What do we have back here? And it's exhibit, for the records, 64. What is 64? Where did that come from?
It come from the medical examiner's office. It's an outline of the injuries to the victim.
All right. And where does that come
From the Office of the Medical Examiner.
from? All right. And is that a typical wound chart, they call it, that is prepared by the medical examiner when they're examining a body to determine its cause of death?
Yes, sir, it is.
All right. And is this particular chart, does it relate to the injuries that were on or about the person of Breonna Taylor after the shooting?
Yes, sir.
All right. And let's go through them if we could, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. And let me get mine here. And you certainly are welcome if you want to use that to help you some. I think we have a beeper. Oh, here we no, one of those. Oh, we got it. All right, you got it.
Here, you want me?
Okay, thank you. Let me put the date on the record. It's September the 23rd, 2020. This is the Jefferson County Grand Jury, a continuation of their evidence we're presenting here about the death of Breonna Taylor. Thank you for reminding me. Thanks, all right. Have you got this little laser?
Yeah, you want it?
You go ahead and point. First of all, let's go to the top right, facing us.
Yes,
Can
sir.
you do that? All right. And by that I mean if we can work through these first two and tell us what the medical examiner determined from that examination of Miss Taylor.
The victim had a gunshot wound to her abdomen and her left upper breast.
All right. Go ahead.
These gunshots did not exit the body.
And let's go to there's one on her left forearm there. See that?
Yes, sir.
All right.
It's a left entry into the forearm, and it exited her upper arm. It went in this area and came out this area.
Okay, all right. And that when the bullet did exit from it,
Yes,
is
sir.
that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. The first two, that is the ones in the torso, those bullets remained and were found by the medical examiner and the detectives who were present at the autopsy.
Yes, sir.
Why is that important that the medical examiner permit law enforcement in an autopsy to recover bullets from the body? Why is that important?
It helps establish the chain of command that came directly from the victim to the medical examiner, and then the detective recovers them directly from the victim.
All right, and what kind of forensic work can be done on bullets? We're going to be talking about some of that, but explain a little bit briefly to the jury
Yes, sir.
why that's important.
Firearms examiners can examine the projectile and see if it came from a particular weapon.
And how do they do that briefly without getting too complicated?
To be at the most simple terms I can, I apologize if I'm a little remedial for some of you. If I was to fire a Glock 22 .40 caliber weapon here today, obviously the projectile would go out through the weapon. It would be marked with lands and grooves. The casing would be ejected. It would also be marked. The firearms examiner then does a comparison to those ballistics by doing test firing from like or similar ammunition, and then compares the test fires to the actual rounds.
So the lands and grooves that are found on an expended bullet and on a casing, are those marks for the most part unique?
Yes, sir.
And is it because of their uniqueness that they can attribute those bullets and casings to an actual gun that was used to fire?
That's correct.
And we're going to be talking about some
Yes,
of that.
sir.
All right. So let's go to the next wound that we have. Can we? No, that's all right. Thank you. I'm sorry. And let's talk about some of the wounds that are on the chart in the lower extremities of Ms. Taylor's body.
She had a wound to her left lower thigh that exited actually her left rear upper thigh or side of her thigh. She also had a through and through, what I call a through and through shot that went through her right foot and exited. And she also had a projectile that was found in the heel of her right foot.
Okay, all right. Did the medical examiner determine the cause of death of this young woman?
Yes, sir.
And what was that?
It was the wound here to the left upper breast.
Did he indicate the trajectory or the manner in which it entered and left in the body, the direction?
Yes, sir. It entered the body in this area and took us downward direction from there.
All right. Did it injure or cause injuries to her lungs, and did they ultimately cause her death?
Injury to her lungs, also ruptured an artery that caused some severe bleeding.
Thank you. Our next exhibit, who is John Mattingly? They've heard his name, just to refresh everybody. Who is he, a detective?
John Mattingly is the detective sergeant from the Louisville Police Department that was also shot at this crime scene.
And we've heard evidence you're familiar with. He was shot at the scene.
Yes, sir.
All right. And what is this we have here at 65 for the record? Thank you. 65 for the record.
Yes, sir.
And what is 65? Orient us here for a minute. Is this a wound locator chart?
Yes, sir. This is a wound locator.
And was this done by Dr. Smock?
Yes, sir.
You're familiar with Dr. Smock?
Yes, sir. I've
years of work.
Worked with Dr. Smock many times over the years.
He's the preeminent forensic wound doctor in Louisville, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Or really in the Commonwealth?
Right.
All right. Now, do we have wounds indicated here that Mr. Mattingly suffered based on the forensic work of Dr. Smock?
Yes, sir. Mr. Sergeant Mattingly had a wound that entered his left upper thigh to the front and exited the rear of his left upper thigh.
All right. And that was the only, was there any other injuries? That was it?
That was the only injury.
All right. Now, you had talked about, we talked briefly, and that's why I asked you questions on it. You said very briefly that casings can be used to determine through a forensic exam what gun they were fired from.
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's take a moment here, because and you help me and the jury talk a little bit about what you mentioned the term Glock. Is Glock a 9mm?
In this particular case, it was a 40 caliber. 40 caliber Glock 22 was the model.
And Are casings ejected from a firearm?
Yes, sir.
Tell me, explain what you mean to the jury. You're familiar with this kind of firearm?
Yes, sir. Typically, if you're firing a firearm, if you're firing it, they will eject to your right, and they will pop out to the right, depending on what's beside you, if it's grass, if it's concrete, how far they travel, and what they go. But typically, they'll eject to the right side of the weapon.
And then what a live round then moves up into the chamber?
That's right. Once the round is ejected, the next round comes into the chamber until the weapon is empty, and then it'll lock back at what point it's empty.
Now, do police officers commonly, and certainly in Louisville, use a 9mm Glock as their service weapon?
Yes, sir. The Glock 40 is the weapon that the Louisville Police Department, all the officers were carrying.
And we've talked about John Mattingly. We've also heard about Brett Hankinson at the scene.
Yes, sir.
And a MYLES COSGROVE. Were they all using Glock 9mm weapons on the night of Breonna's death?
They were using the Glock 40.
The Glock 40, I keep saying, I'm sorry. All right.
40 caliber.
But that Glock ejects the casings?
Yes.
All right. And in preparation for your testimony, you and I went over the photos of that.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that correct?
Yes, sir.
Because at the scene photo, there's a number of casings.
Right.
And were those casings examined forensically to determine the source of the firing of those bullets?
Yes, sir. They were sent to the state police lab for analysis.
All right. And in preparation, you and I have been looking with other prosecutors at the photos that will help the jury see where these casings were located. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let me go to my next series here. 66. All right. Now let's get us oriented here for just a moment. Let's wait one moment here. I may have you do a little walking around here for a second.
Trajectory.
One moment here. All right. Detective Wolf, could you come over here? You might be able to, using these, can you kind of orient the jury? We're going to be looking at.
If I get you way, I'll post something. I'll try to get up. This is the front of the apartment, the window where gunshots were in. These markings that you see here that were initially marked by the Louisville Police Department evidence collection, it was determined these were already at the scene. They had no bearing on this site. There were some old casings, but they were marked initially.
And we're going to be looking at some photos. In fact, Reba's already put one up, kind of orient them to where these projectiles are with either photo that helps you.
The projectiles are the casings you'll be seeing. The first casings are here. This is the parking lot. They're in the area of these cars.
All right. Great. All right, let's go up here and look at what we got. Now, I'm gonna make it simple.
If you look at this, this is the area here where the casings were.
All right. Now, I'm gonna make it simple. Were all the casings that you and I are gonna be talking to the jury about this morning, were they all forensically examined?
Yes, sir.
By the Kentucky State Police ballistics expert?
Yes, sir.
All right. And was the Kentucky State Police ballistics expert able to identify in each instance the casing and where the source of the firearm was?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now we're looking at some casings you're telling the jury is out in the parking lot away from the apartment. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Are these casings that were determined by the forensic ballistic exam to be Brett Hankinson's?
Yes, sir.
All right.
And there again, these here are the casings I mentioned earlier that are not relevant to this scene. They were in the parking lot or in the mulch from an earlier incident. I think somebody mentioned something about maybe New Year's Eve somebody shot off a gun.
Those are irrelevant and determined to be unconnected.
These are the casings we're considering.
Okay. That's 66.
Yes, sir.
Can we look at 60? Which ones are there? You got 1, 2.
1, 2, 1, 3, 4. Here's 5, 6, 7, 8. I believe 9 is behind the fire. Yes. And these are just, if you look at these, here's the back of this pickup truck. The first group of casings are here, and then you come over here to the right slightly, if you're facing the apartment, is where the second set of casings
All
are.
right.
Yes,
Six.
sir.
Are we at 9, that we are we determined there's been 9 casings from Brett Hackison?
10 casings were recovered, yes, sir.
Thank you for the question. Raise your hand if anytime you got a question. Okay, we're on 60, let's go to 68, if we could. All right.
There again, this is the casings, and this is the sliding glass door that you'll see was shots were fired through, and this is the window that you'll see shots are fired through. Right.
All of these casings we see around these vehicles you pointed out to the jury, I got to stick
Yes,
them out of the shadow.
There you go, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that you can just see there, and 10.
They were all casings from a firearm that was determined to belong to Brett Hankinson. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Now I want to go to I get 60. Let's go to 69 real quick. I think you've already counted these, but let's see. Yes, ma'am. You already put it up? I didn't. Okay, 68. I'm sorry. And then we'll go to 69. Okay. All right. Sorry. Thank you. These are all just other photographs of
Yes,
the
sir.
casings located.
Just another picture of the casings.
Now, when there is a crime scene, is it common for detectives like yourself and other agents with law enforcement to work a scene
Yes, sir.
and to collect evidence?
Yes, sir.
Is part of that collection, is it common for them to collect casings and bullets and any other paraphernalia that looks to them to be connected to the crime?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, so we've got, all of these are Brett Hankinson.
Yes, sir.
All right. Yes, please.
I'm assuming these vehicles weren't there at the time of the shots?
Yes, this is.
They weren't moved, right?
No, these were the pictures actually at the crime scene by the Louisville police detectives.
Thank you. Now, you had pointed out, I think a moment ago, about the sliding door over here.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Al. Let's show them, because we're going to show a couple of photos of this window.
Here again, he's in this parking lot. Where I am here is the sliding glass door that 5 shots were fired through, and then the window that 5 shots were fired through.
Is that BREONNA's sister's bedroom there?
Yes, sir. That's my understanding.
And this goes into the
To the living room.
living room.
Living room down.
Okay. Now, I asked you that because I want to show the jury Exhibit 70. Detective Wolf, what is that? Explain that to the jury. Why are
This is
these
the
marks?
screen door that is on the outside of, you can see the shattered sliding glass door, and this is marking the 5 holes in the screen where the projectile went through the screen door.
And based on the trajectory, those are Hankinson's shots,
Yes,
as far
sir.
as we know.
Yes, sir.
All right, what about 71?
There again, that's a close-up of the same thing. The screen door on the outside of the shattered, you can see the shattered sliding glass door. You know, that's a good question. I can't.
No, I'll say straight. I think it's the sliding door, not the room in the black.
And it looks like just a typical screen door to me that you.
What I mean is what's behind it, the boxes, I see.
Oh, that's just the room. You see and there was some blinds that you'll see when you see some pictures inside.
And curtain too.
Yeah.
Yes. And what we have marked there, the actual bullet holes
Right.
from the bullets flying through that part of the apartment.
Yes.
All right. Yes, man, yes, sir.
Yeah, those bullets, are those the ones that went into apartment 3?
We're going to show you some trajectories. Good question. If you'll hang on, we're going to be able to show you. We're going to talk a little about the trajectory of forensic work that's done. So hold that for a moment. You're right on target, I think. All right. Probably had a window. Wait a minute. Yeah, go ahead.
So he was shooting from behind the vehicle.
You know, it's okay, David. There again, all we know is where the shell casings were found. You know, typically, like I said, you guys fire.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
Typically, they will be somewhere right in this area. So you can see two kind of piles. Obviously, there was a lot going on. There's a potential, I think you'll see that in some of these other pictures. The first thing that gets kicked and moved and picked up in boots is shell casings. They're easy to get knocked around, but in general, to your point, you'll expect to see your casings right now where you're shooting.
What are we looking at here?
This is the second window that.
What exhibit number is that? Okay, got to introduce you, Jeff. All right.
And you see the shots through the window that is 5 shot.
That's the window in Brianna's sister's bedroom.
Yes, sir.
How many bullets went through there?
5.
All right. COSGROVE's next.
That was exhibit 22.
Thank you. Let's go to exhibit 72. First of all, tell where are we here on this scene here?
We were looking into the where it goes into where the apartment here is Miss Taylor's apartment. This is apartment 3. This is where the officers were staging to enter the apartment and where COSGROVE and Matteline's shell casings were located.
All right. And these markers here, what do they represent? I think you just said a moment ago. What are we going to see here?
These are mostly shell casings. There's some other things in here, but I think the emphasis on this is the shell casings from Detective COSGROVE and Detective Sergeant Mattingly.
All right.
And there's a couple of other things marked in there you'll be able to see when we get up close.
All right. Tells you 19. May get a closer one here. Let's go to 73. See what that helps us out. Is it the same foyer we're looking at, just a different portion of that breezeway?
Yes, and you can see here is the entry device, RAM, whatever you call it. They call them that they use to make entry to the door, and it's basically just a RAM. And then you see shell casings, 22, 23, 29, 28.
So let's point out for the jury some of the casings here that are numbered. If you can you read them all right? For instance,
Some of them
19.
I got 19 is detective has been identified as coming. There again, these casings were sent to the Kentucky State Police Lab for examination and comparison with the officer's guns. 19 this came back as matching Detective Cosgrove's weapon.
All right.
20, which is right here, again, Detective Cosgrove. 23, Detective Cosgrove. 24, 25, 28, I believe that's 28, 29, 30,
There's 29.
29, 28, 30 is casing Detective Cosgrove. 31, and looking for 32. 32, 33 is the phone. 34, 35.
All these from Cosgrove?
Yes, sir.
How many shell casings from Cosgrove was there recovered from the scene by the police?
16.
All right. Now, kind of orient them. That's in the breezeway, and
Yes.
what apartments are those two?
I believe this is apartment 3 right here, and then the victim's apartment is right here.
Yeah.
That's 1 and 2.
I think there's one more casing, Rewa, that was just inside the door. I don't mean to get you that.
27.
There's 27, shell casing 27.
How many casings from Cosgrove altogether?
He's asked a question.
16.
16?
Yeah, 38. And there's 39 just inside the door.
How many bullets can be fired with a fully loaded magazine and one in the chamber with the type of 9mm that Detective Miles Cosgrove would have had that evening?
A Glock 22/40 caliber will fire 16 rounds till empty. After 16 rounds, it'll lock back in. You have to reload with another magazine, and you will have them be able to fire. So he had 16 rounds available.
Pretty much empty what he had.
I'm sorry.
He would have pretty much empty with the...
Yeah, so he basically, it appears, shot his firearm, fully loaded firearm empty.
All of those that you just read off, they were all Cosgrove?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And will you get to the, will you speak clear about the distance of them?
I'll try.
Okay.
Well, I think we'll show you some trajectory charts that will kind of work it off.
Okay.
Make it
So
make sense.
will it speak to like how far a casing can fly
How far a casing
when
can
shot? Yeah.
I don't know if there's any scientific evidence to how far a casing will fly. A guy that spent a lot of time shooting on the range, that's it. About here to the table, maybe. And there again, it depends on a lot of factors.
Okay. So do you feel that the distance that these were, as far as like out towards the sidewalk, that would be an appropriate distance for him to be standing in front of the doorway? Does that question make sense?
It probably does, but you gotta realize that. Ask me again. It probably makes sense to everybody. Yeah, there's a possibility. Right, I understand after this happened, you had medical people, you had other officers come, and it was a chaotic situation. So to say this is the final arresting of all these cases, that they could have been kicked or knocked or picked up, it's, you know,
Not
it's.
necessarily where they fell.
Right,
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Put for the record, our exhibit 70 through 84
This is
were
all-
COSGROVE's bullets. Cases, right?
An approximation. But would it appear that he hired them all those things standing in a similar position?
Who was you?
Cosgrove.
Cosgrove?
No, since we're only speaking about these that we found so far, does it seem like or was he moving a lot, or I mean, there's no way of telling exactly, I realize that, but it just seems like is he moving much, or is he just standing still, firing the whole magazine?
I believe what happened, and it's there again, it's just based on what statements I've heard. I believe after Detective Mattingly gets hit, he's kind of the first guy in, Cosgrove's behind him, so I think he kind of moved up to put the cover on Mattingly. So I think he did move. I think he did, when he moved inside, it's probably where you get the case in 39. So a police officer trained to try to get cover, try to be behind something when you're shooting. That's a natural instinct for a police officer. So when you go through that door, you don't have any cover. So as soon as Madeline went down pretty much in that area, he's trying to cover his fallen officers.
So it would seem, this is all approximation, that 39, would you have had to cross the threshold?
I believe that's possible. There again, that's,
Okay.
we're dealing with the
I
facts.
was just saying the casing goes off to the right.
Right. But, there again, there's factors involved in it where officers are coming in and out, medical people are coming in and out. But that would, yes, if you.
And that one is Cosgrove.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and I think I stepped on his question, but his was exhibit 73 through 84. Those are the photos that Detective Wolf identified, the 16 casings that were, the forensic exam said they were fired by Cosgrove's 9mm. Is that right, Detective?
Yes, sir. It's 40 caliber.
We're going to go to Mattingly. Let's go to, wait a minute. Here's Mattingly right here. That's Cosgrove. What numbers are Matt? Yeah. Okay, we got 77. Okay, all right. We get them off. We got them off so far.
We got them all so far to start at 77. So here's the apartment.
We got to do that if we don't.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes,
Mattingly, 77.
We got him. Okay, we're good.
No, you don't have him. You haven't talked to him.
I haven't talked to him, but that's
Right.
what we need,
Yeah.
77.
Will you find yours?
Here we are. I got it. Okay.
No, no, for the record. Okay. He was saying yesterday, they said they were reading 9mm. 40 caliber.
9mm Glock.
Can you repeat the question?
34.
Yesterday, Detective LOUISVILLE said that the approved weapons for LMPD officers are Glock 9mm models 17, 19, 45, and 34. Their off-duty weapons are 26, 27, and 19. It seems like there's another 30. Is a 9mm the same as you keep referring to a Glock, a 40 caliber?
No, it's a different,
It is a
different, yes, different caliber.
So then they were not using,
I think you may be confusing off-duty with,
Can you ask a question again? Well, yesterday, Detective LOUISVILLE from the weapons training had stated that the approved weapons for LMPD officers are a Glock 9mm. This is all he mentioned was a Glock 9mm model 17, 19, 45, and 34. They're off-duty weapons. They could use 4 other models. Actually, one of them My question was, what's the difference? The initial question was, is a Glock 9 the same as a 40 caliber? Are the 9mm and the 40 caliber the same thing? And it's not. It is a different size bullet.
Yes, it's large.
And then my follow-up question is, were they using an unauthorized gun?
Was your question, what is an authorized firearm for a police officer with LMPD?
Yeah, we were told by the weapons trainer yesterday, in the recorded segment, that the approved weapons were 9mm handguns. And now we're hearing that the bullets fired were 40 caliber bullets. So that doesn't match up with what we heard yesterday for what's an approved handgun.
Try to get an answer for it.
So are these officers using unapproved weapons?
And unapproved. We'll get an answer for it. You don't know the answer to that?
No.
Okay. They're asking whether they had approved or unapproved firearms on the night of the shooting. We'll find out. Rather than speculate.
And he did say from the forensics, all the shells, casings were from the 40 caliber guns. They're all from the 40 caliber gun?
Yes, but there were three
Correct.
separate firearms that were fired that night. All right.
Thank you.
Let's go to Mattingly. It's 77.
Casings from Detective Mattingly.
And which were his casings?
26, 27, 28, 30, and 31.
And this is out in the breezeway?
Yes.
And where approximately, if you can tell by looking at the photo, was BREONNA's apartment that night? Approximately.
I believe here is the door to her apartment.
I believe it's right over here. Right. All right. Okay. All right. Now, where is apartment 3?
Right here in this location.
Okay. And why is apartment 3 a concern to this particular investigation?
That is where the projectiles went through the wall of the apartment 4 and into apartment 3.
There were people living in apartment 3?
Yes.
Did that include a mother and a father and a child?
Yes.
And were they present in that apartment the night these shootings occurred?
Yes.
And I want to put up 78, if I could. What is that photo of?
This is apartment 3.
All right. And that's the apartment we're talking about.
Right.
And that's the apartment some bullets entered that apartment that night. Is that right?
Yes.
Now let's go to 79 inside. What's going on here, Detective?
This is the wall in apartment 3 where you can see the projectiles came through the wall.
All right. Are two of those?
You can see one there, and then you can barely see this one at the.
All right. I'm going to pause there for a second because there's a moment here that we need to make a mental note of. Think about what they just were talking about. They were talking about, as you heard him describing what weapons that the officer were using. You heard the jurors say, well, we thought it was a 9mm that shot John Mattingly. Right? Then you heard him say, the one who was giving the testimony, that it is a Glock caliber or 40 caliber Glock 22, which are the 3 officers are all having those guns. We were told in the public that the guns or the shot came from a 9mm. Now we come to find out that it's coming from a what? The 40 cal Glock 22. Now all 3 of the officers have the guns. Okay? Keep that in mind. I think that's where the whole case lies at. Because if Kenneth Walker said that he fired a warning shot, but they said that his warning shot shot the officer, John Mattingly, in his leg or in his upper thigh, then it come to find out now through the testimony that it wasn't. What can you say? How do you observe that? What is your conclusion with that just being said by itself? Regardless of everything else that's going to be said, because think about it. This case isn't about Breonna Taylor at all. See how they switched it and went to the neighbor, the father, the mother that's pregnant with the daughter. Again, I'm not trying to make that belittle that and say that's not significant. But we're talking about initially you're at somewhere else and someone got killed in that premise. So how is it that we're not having a case about what took place then? How did somebody get exonerated that you could testify and say, well, again, matter of fact, I don't need it. I'll let his point go. And then we're going to go right back into that. But I just want to interrupt that just for the fact of that, right? Because remember this here, what he said.
What are you?
I'm black and beautiful.
What is your nationality?
My nationality is Afro-American.
Suppose I had some money in my pocket. Suppose I gave you $1 to say that you're an American Negro. This is money now. Money talks. Money talks. This dollar, and if you don't say it, you don't get it. You're an American Negro, aren't you?
No.
You won't have any money. You know you need money, don't you?
Yes.
You need money to live, don't you?
Yes.
All right. All you have to say, Leon, is that you're an American Negro. Aren't you an American Negro?
They're an independent body. If they wanted to make an assessment about different charges, they could have done that. But our recommendation was that Mattingly and COSGROVE were justified in their acts and their conduct.
One officer was charged with reckless endangerment for firing wantonly into the apartment, but the failure to charge anyone with killing Breonna Taylor has led to about a week's worth of protests here in Louisville. More than 200 people arrested and 2 police officers shot and wounded. Right now, the governor has said he has lifted the curfew and there are no plans to activate the National Guard. Harris, back to you.
Assessment about different charges. They could have done that, but our recommendation, different charges, they could have done that, but our recommendation, 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 recommendation.
Okay, so it was his recommendation, right? It was his recommendation. The recommendation that was given by him is what we're hearing, because now that it has been established what guns were used and the guns do not match up, this is why the jury came out and said, hey, hold on. What y'all presented and what was said was 2 different things. Now, we don't know, because of the anonymity of the jurors, who it was was it more than one? But the fact that they did it is why this is being out here. So you got to ask yourself this question, and I'm going to move on. Then who is taking one for the team to cover this up so that get your focus off? Understand what I'm saying here? What's big enough to take your attention off so that you can't focus on this? What did they just come up with? You figure that out. And when you figure that out, then you know. So let's get back to what this is, because that's where it lies at, y'all. Now, what they do with this and go forward, well, only time gonna tell. But that in itself, what we just heard, and finding out, y'all got this here, and this is all officially issued, and the weapon that is causing the injury is come from one of the same one, then to exonerate Kenneth that night, we know why now. We know why he was exonerated. Or we say exonerated, let's say the charges dropped, right? We know why now. So then, if he's not the initiator, and BREONNA end up being dead, then don't it need to be a process to try to figure out what the true cause was that night? Or we're just going to charge it to the game? And that's what it looked like. We're going to charge it to the game. So anyway, we're going to move on and get back into this. And this is the other part to it. And get them up there and let's get it.
So there's 3 bullets, at least on this photo, that entered that apartment.
Right.
And is this apartment, does it back into BREONNA's apartment? Just pretty much the mirror image
Yes,
of it.
you look at this backs up to her dining room.
All right. 80. Let's look at that. Is 80 the one that you were showing the jury a moment ago that's behind that chair?
Yes, that's what you can see behind the chair.
All right. Let's go to 81. What's that?
That is a projectile located on the kitchen table.
All right. Is this in apartment 3?
Yes.
All right. Was that recovered?
Yes.
All right. And was it forensic work done on that bullet?
Yes, sir.
And did that forensic work determine who shot that bullet? Went through the wall and landed on the table?
Yes, sir, did.
And who fired that bullet that night?
Detective Hankinson.
All right. Can we go to 82? Whose sliding glass door is that?
That's the sliding glass door in apartment 3.
All right. These are the folks that live in the apartment right next to BREONNA.
Yes, sir.
It appeared that got all shot up too that night.
Yes, sir.
83.
That's the projectile located on the floor, same in the glass from the door.
All right. Was that forensically examined by the Kentucky State Police ballistic experts?
Yes, sir, it was.
Were they able from that forensic exam of that bullet to determine who fired that bullet that went through the apartment 3 and landed on the floor?
Yes, sir.
Who did that?
Detective Hankinson.
All right, okay. Make sure I got it. 1 second here. Well, I got it. Wait, one. I just got one quick. Let me check with Rewa real quick. I don't have 84.
About to go. Wait, you can get it.
Yeah, it should be 85. Wait. You're saying 84. Oh, that's right. we've talked to, ladies and gentlemen, jury here about several bullets and bullet holes that were located inside apartment 3. Bullets recovered in and around this scene of the shooting that night, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And a number of them, all of them, were forensically examined to see if they could determine who the origin of those firearms. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And so when you're going to be telling the jury who fired it, it's based on the reported forensic exam by ballistic experts. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And so let's go to number 85. All right. And just, I think jury's seen this before, but just for the record, if you'll orient, where are we in BREONNA's apartment there?
This is the hallway apartment. You can see.
All right. There's some markers there, is that right?
Yes, sir.
42 is one of them, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And it's kind of hard to see, but there's a casing, a bullet there, is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's a bullet.
All right. And was that bullet forensically examined?
Yes, sir.
And whose bullet was that? Who
came-
fired that, rather?
It came from Detective COSGROVE's.
All right. There's a marker 43 not right next to BREONNA's body lying down there. And do you recall what that is?
That is a phone.
All right, that's her cell phone?
Yes, sir.
All right, and then 41, can you see that?
Yes.
Shine that. What is that?
That is a casing.
All right, and were the ballistics examiners, were they able to determine the origin of that casing? What gun fired that left that casing there on the floor?
It is a Glock 43X.
All right, and who was using that gun that night?
It's my understanding Kenneth Walker's. That was Kenneth Walker's weapon.
All right, so that casing came from that firearm.
Yes, sir.
All right, and they recovered Mr. Walker, the gun Mr. Walker had used that night. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And did forensic exam work on it, just like we've been talking about.
Yes, sir.
All right. All right. 86. All right. Where are we? We're still in BREONNA's apartment here, are we not?
Yes.
Okay. And were there bullets that were recovered by the police department examining this apartment that night?
Yes.
All right. And we actually have, there's holes, bullet holes in these cabinets here, aren't there?
Yes, sir.
All right. Were there bullets recovered from that?
Yes, sir.
All right. And just to orient the jury here, go back just 1 second. I apologize. And did you already shine these two entries there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's go to 45, and if we could next. It is 45. Wait a minute. Yes, 40. Let's go to the next one. It'll be 47. Got it. All right. Okay. It's wait a minute. That's the marker number. 87. Can we go to 87? I'm sorry. And what is that we're looking at?
That is marker 45.
All right. And what is that?
That's a projectile.
All right. Did they attempt to match that?
Yes.
They have any success?
No, they didn't.
All right. Now that one, can we go back for just a moment? See that rod there and what that is? Can we go back to 86 for a moment? Thank you. And that pan, did it come from this particular cabinet here on the left at the bottom there?
Yes.
Where you see the rod. Thank you. Can we go to 88 for a moment? Thank you. All right. Did they recover a bullet in that area of that stove in BREONNA's kitchen?
Yes, sir.
And whereabouts is that? Can you show the jury? There you go.
There.
All right.
Here's the stuff.
All right. And 46, was that examined by the ballistics experts at the Kentucky State Police Lab?
Yes.
Were they able to make any determination of the what gun fired that bullet that landed there next to the stove?
No, sir, it was inconclusive.
All right. Yes, questions?
Could they at least tell the caliber?
Please.
Did they at least tell the caliber of the?
Did you hear the question, Detective? He's asking, did we know the caliber? We're going to check.
Of the 45 influence.
Yes, good question. It may take a moment. There are quite a bit of items that were examined for ballistic exam. So just give us 1 second. We're going to get an answer.
I got a follow-up question. We can answer that.
I'm going to let you get your questions.
You just tell me what.
Alex, can we flip the light on for a second? Just 1 second. I know it's in there.
They were all identified as .40 caliber. And when I say inconclusive, actually what they're saying is they could have came from any of the officer's weapons, manual, COSGROVE.
Right. Yes. I apologize, I didn't bring that point up. When we say they didn't match it, it didn't necessarily mean there's some outlier that shot that in. They know it came from one of the three, either Miles Cosgrove, John Mattingly, or Brad Hankinson, but there was insufficient detail on the bullet for them to conclude which of the three. And let me go back, because they're looking at what, striations and
Yes.
marks, and there has to be a sufficient number of identical marks for it to say, yes, that came from Miles Cosgrove's gun. If they don't, then they call it inconclusive. And so I may be using some loose terms saying they weren't able to match that up. Well, they weren't, but they know it came from one of those three files. The only one different was the one you saw in the hallway that Casey came from. Kenneth Walton. All right. This young lady had a question.
I think you just answered it. I was going to see if that ruled out their weapons, but it doesn't sound like that rules anybody out. Just inconclusive to know which one it came from.
We asked the question before you asked it.
Well done.
Good. But if you haven't, please continue to ask. That's what you all are here for. All right. Now, when you were showing the jury the outside of this window, you recall that belonged to Breonna's sister's bedroom?
Yes, sir.
We've looked at, we even pointed out bullet holes in the screen adjacent to that window before it got blown out. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Did we recover, and I'm looking at Exhibit 89. That's what I'm up to now? Yes, 89.
Yes, sir.
Were there bullets located in the sister's bedroom?
Yes, sir.
All right. Is that marker 47, is that where one of the bullets was located?
Yes, sir.
Was it in her dresser drawer?
Yes, sir.
All right. And can I go to number 90? Photograph number 90? Yes. Yes, okay, yes, thank you. When, I'm gonna go back real quick to 47, was that a projectile or bullet, I'm calling it, that was
Projectile,
located?
yes, sir.
Yeah. And were they able, did they examine it? And if they examined it, were they able to distinguish whether it was COSGROVE, Mattingly, or Hankins that fired that bullet?
They did examine it, and they were not able to distinguish.
Okay. There it was, I'm sorry, I stepped on your...
Oh, I'm sorry, I just said who fired that.
Was there a second bullet found in the sister's bedroom?
Yes, sir.
Was it in the closet of her bedroom?
Yes, sir.
All right. Is 48 a marker that was used to identify the location of that bullet when the police found it?
Yes, sir.
All right. And was that bullet taken down to the KSP lab and examined it to see if they could determine the source, who shot that bullet into her bedroom?
Yes, sir. It was indistinguishable. They could not tell which officer had fired that.
No. Same thing. It was we know it came from one of those three guns, but we couldn't tell which of the three.
Yes, sir.
All right. There's a shoebox.
Yes, sir.
Is there a hole in that, a bullet, what appears to be a bullet hole?
Yes, sir.
Did they locate a projectile in there?
They did.
And that shoebox is, what does that appear from looking at the photo, where that is located?
It's in the victim's closet.
When you're talking about the vision, we're talking about BREONNA's.
Yes.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. She's ahead of me. All right.
And were they able to match that bullet with any of the three firearms used by the three detectives?
No, sir. There again, it could have came from any of their weapons, but they were not able to distinguish which one it came from.
Yes, we got a question.
Was the shoebox
in the closet or on the wall?
It was located in the closet, but I believe they took it out when they photographed it and put it on. If you see here, here's a closet, here's a...
Good question, though. I appreciate it. It was originally in the closet. Is that clear? Is that clear, your question? Originally in the closet. Thank you for the question.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I had to say this. Why are they trying to act as if like only the officers inside are doing the shooting when you see the photographs of the casings outside of the window? Why is it only the three officers? You gotta ask yourself that question. They can't find the conclusiveness of the bullets is because there's other guns. Moving on. Okay, there we go.
Let's go to 92. Could we do that for a moment? And then we might want to flip back and forth. All right. Explain to the jury what we're looking at there.
That's in the closet where the shoebox was located.
Is that a bullet hole they've marked?
Yes, sir.
Is that where that shoebox was before it was
Yes,
moved and examined by the police?
Yes, sir. That's my
All
understanding.
right, thank you. Thank you, Ruth. Yes, ma'am.
So,
Please.
where that shoebox was in the closet with those other shoes?
Yeah.
Spin it around. Put it back to the closet where the shoe boxes were.
Can we go back and look at that closet that Bree was showing us a minute ago? So she can, see what it shows.
There you go.
Does that answer your question?
So the bottom of the shoebox then was turned, with the bullet, the shoebox on the washing machine was turned facing that wall. So the bullet came from through that wall.
Yes, ma'am.
Not from.
I might answer. I should be answering. Let the detective answer. Did you hear her question?
Yes. She's going to put the trajectory report up, which I think is helpful to kind of take a look at these.
While Rick was getting at trajectory, tell him a little bit about what is this?
This is
and who did this work for us? Yes, when we got
Before you
questions.
get on it, can we go back to that picture?
Yes. You talking about the shoebox?
Yeah, it's right there with the door. So is the other, I see where the color of one bullet, is that another bullet right next to it? No, that's a capsule. What is that?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, that did.
If you look at the wall on the other side, where's the trajectory?
Did that answer your question, ma'am?
Here's the,
I guess so, but it's still going into that wall.
right.
Yeah, you can see that the, yeah, the shot in the wall.
We're going to, now this is a different exhibit. I think we may have seen some of the other day with Barbara. Tell the lady and gentlemen, Jerry, what is it that all these lines and marks, and what is this exhibit we're looking at now, and how does it help us?
This was prepared by the FBI when they went in as a trajectory report, and basically it just shows you they take the holes and the bullets and where they're able to match up things and get an idea of where they came from, and then go back and show what direction these rounds came from. You can see these rounds here that we talked about earlier come in the direction of where Detective Hankinson's casings were found, as well as these that go through. And then these rounds here come in the direction of where Detective COSGROVE and MATTINGLY were at.
Now, not every fired shot could we get a trajectory on, is that correct?
Yes, sometimes depending on what the hole, what it was, they can establish it's not a clean enough hole or clean enough to do a trajectory, so they can't do every one, but these were the ones. And to me, this kind of makes me shake my head and get an understanding of what was going on.
For instance, if you don't have a hole or an exit from which a bullet can be located, can they do a trajectory?
It depends on it. No, they can't. If they can't, if they find a bullet that was laying in the floor, which happened a couple times in this, they can't. But like the good indications here, where you have a screen door that had 5 shots in it, or 5 shots, and then you have a wall over here, it's easy to then come up with trajectories. The more points you have that you can use.
What's on the other side of this wall?
There again, that's apartment 3.
All right.
The pictures we showed you earlier of the other side.
Does that help you all seeing some of the trajectory we make? He had shown it to you earlier to kind of show you where Hankinson was firing shots outside of the apartment. And if you could show the one up in the bathroom, we're getting ready to show that to them. And that appears to go through the sister's bedroom, doesn't it?
Yes.
And now that takes us right to 92, which is a bullet the police found that night.
Yes.
And where is this bullet located at? We can kind of see it's a bathroom.
It's there in the front, there again, the front bathroom, what I call the front bathroom. There was 2, one for the back, and it went through, and you looked at the trajectory report, and then came to rest.
All right, good. I was
This-
just getting
this
ready to
one.
ask her to do that. Show them what bathroom that is where that bullet came.
This one here.
All right. And this, let me, there's two bathrooms, the one on the right, is that the one that off of BREONNA's bed?
That's off of what you call the master, what they call the master bedroom, and this was the.
That's one I call the sister's bedroom, I call it. All right. Now, we've got a bullet in what looks like the soap tray of that bathroom, the sister's bathroom. Was that taken to the Kentucky State Police lab to determine if they could identify who fired that bullet that night that landed in that bathroom?
Yes, sir, that was determined to come from Detective Hankinson's weapon.
All right, thank you. Was there a furnace in the hallway of BREONNA's apartment?
Yes, sir, right there.
All right. And was there a bullet recovered from that furnace by the police?
Yes, sir.
All right. That's 93. Thank you.
Sir.
And as I've asked you before, was that bullet marked on the photo as Exhibit 93?
Yes,
Was
sir.
that also examined by the forensic expert at the Kentucky State Police lab?
Yes, sir.
Was he able to identify who fired that bullet that went into the furnace?
Yes, sir, Detective Hankinson.
All right. I'm gonna hold off on that just a moment. All right. We're gonna come back to that. Now, you had mentioned that the FBI did their own forensic exam inside the apartment.
Yes, sir.
Was that in approximately June of this year?
Yes, sir, they came back and conducted another search warrant and collected some additional projectiles.
Did they dig into the walls and pull out some bullets that had not heretofore been recovered by the police?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I'm going to go through a few of these, and two of them are fairly important, aren't they?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, these are bullets that were found All right, we're going to go through some. You have your FBI results. Here.
Yes, sir.
Now, these are bullets that were recovered by the FBI, and the bullets that they recovered, did they examine those bullets forensically?
Yes, sir.
All right. Were we, by reviewing the FBI report, were you, detective, able to specifically determine, what the wall, exactly in the wall where a bullet may have been recovered, or just the general room?
Just the general room. I was not there for that particular search.
Okay. But in one instance, we do have the bullet holes. We're going to talk to the jury about that in a minute. All right, for instance, we have A in dining room. That's room A.
Yes, sir.
And was a bullet recovered in the wall of that dining room?
Yes, sir.
All right. And was that examined forensically to see if they could determine the origin, who shot it?
Yes, sir. The FBI forensic examiner was able to determine that came from Detective Hankinson's.
All right. And then they also recovered one from the BREONNA's room. That's H.
Yes, sir.
All right. And the wall right in there?
Yes, sir.
All right. And were they able to determine that instance the source of that bullet that was embedded in her wall?
Yes, sir.
sidewalk? Who was that?
Detective Hankinson.
All right. And another one, was there not a second one also embedded in that wall
Yes, sir.
of her bedroom?
Yes, sir.
And what did the forensic say the origin of that bullet?
Detective Hankinson's weapon.
All right. There was also a bullet recovered from the living room, from the wall in the living room.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that in that general area?
Yes, sir.
All right. And who was the source of that bullet that went into that was embedded in the wall of the living room?
Detective Mattingly.
All right. They found one that was in the hallway. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And 94, can I put that up? Okay, 94 is up there. Is 90, under 94, does that contain a bullet that's in the hallway?
Yes, sir.
All right, there's 3 of them.
Yes, sir.
And did the FBI able to recover 2 of those 3 from the holes?
Yes, sir.
All right. And were they able to determine who the source was?
Yes, sir. One was from Detective Mattingly.
All right. And was there any other material on that bullet that was forensically examined?
They were able to recover DNA off of that projectile that they could say was a female DNA.
Did it have blood or some other biological substance on the bullet?
Yes, sir. I assume so.
All right. And while we're here on that, was there a second bullet recovered by the FBI from that wall that we're looking at?
Yes, sir. A second projectile was recovered from that area. It also had female DNA.
All right. And who was the source of that gun?
Detective Cosgrove.
All right.
Question.
Yes.
This wall is the closet.
No, ma'am. This wall is right here behind where the victim was laying.
Right, back in the
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm sorry. You're right.
So it's one of those, so neither of those shots is the shot that went through the wall into the shoebox, right?
No, it was the bullet was recovered. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be testifying. She's asking you if any of
No,
those
these 2 projectiles that were recovered were coming from that wall.
Okay. Thank you.
I apologize for stepping on your answer, your question, rather.
The DNA on both of those projectiles was the same female DNA. They could say it was the same female DNA. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
One was, explain to him, but one was each one, because I think I kind of stepped on his answer here.
One was from Detective Cosgrove's weapon, and one was from Detective Mattingly's weapon.
I get your question? All right. I also have it on hallway D. Did they recover another bullet down there? Not one of the 2 we just talked about.
Yes, sir.
And who did?
Once again, I don't mean to interrupt, but they just said something, right? As you've been seeing the pictures that I have collected and put it into, so that would be, you could see it. It's not them talking and then you're seeing it. Well, we just happened to line up the picture that had three holes, right? Did you see the one with the 3 holes on the wall? Or you just heard that he said that the FBI had to come in and determine. One is Mattingly, the other one is Cosgrove, and that says somebody else. Well, those are the 3 that seen that the ones that hit Breonna Taylor, right? Keep that in mind. So so they said the DNA that was found on the material of the female, which is Breonna Taylor. So they sharing bullets. Like Cosgrove got 1, he got what Mattingly said he shot off 6, right? They told you that Cosgrove shot off 10? That's 16. So where's the other? If that's one of his bullets and he only got 2 of his 10, we're still missing what? 14? Just a point of reference. Let's continue.
Were they able to determine the source of that one?
There was Detective Cosgrove.
All right. And another one in the hallway, they bet. dug out of the wall. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, Detective
What-
Cosgrove.
All right, okay. Two more.
You have one more living room.
Okay.
So there's 3 total vacants and 2 total Mattingly and 4 COSGROVE. You can go over the living room. For COSGROVE.
I got everything but the living room?
Yeah.
Okay. And was there another one from the living room wall that there was a bullet was embedded in there?
Yes, sir.
All right,
And that was Detective Cosgrove's.
okay.
weapon.
All right. I'm going to get to the 2 bullets that were recovered from the body.
But you didn't tell me that the KSP was, they didn't be able to get results from the body. You haven't gone over that?
No, I haven't
Okay.
touched that.
Okay.
We talked about the bullets being recovered from her, all right?
Right.
But we haven't talked about what they did on it. Now, I want to go back some if I could, okay?
Yes, sir.
When we first started this morning with the jurors, you talked about the autopsy.
Yes, sir.
You remember that?
Yes, sir.
And you talked about the fact that there were bullets that were recovered from BREONNA's body during the autopsy.
Yes, sir.
All right. And there were 3 of them, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Was one of them embedded in the heel of her, I believe, right foot?
Yes, sir.
That was recovered, right?
Yes, sir.
But that was never identified.
No, it was not identified specifically as one of the officer's weapons.
All right. Now, there were 2 other bullets recovered.
Yes, sir.
All right. And one of those 2 bullets, all right, caused her death. That was the one in the upper right. Went
Yes, sir.
through her lungs, you said, and part
Yes,
of
sir.
her artery. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And they were recovered, were they examined by the Kentucky State Police, those 2 bullets?
They were.
All right. And when Kentucky State Police did an exam, was the purpose of that exam to determine if they could, who the source of those 2 bullets into her torso?
Yes, sir.
All right. And do they do that through an examination of striations made from the bullets they recovered from her body, along with test sample bullets that they took at the lab?
Yes, sir.
From each of the 3 firearms used by the policemen?
Yes, sir.
All right. And in doing so, are they attempting to match up, for lack of a better term, striations and other unique marks on the bullets that was recovered from BREONNA to the same kinds of markings that may be present on the test bullets from the 3 policemen?
Yes, sir.
All right, and that's a common technique in forensic work.
Yes,
That's
sir.
been around for 100 years.
Yes, sir.
All right. And they do that with equipment like high-intensity magnifying equipment
Yes, sir.
that expands, considerably the ability for them to examine these small and unique marks on bullets.
Yes, sir.
Now, those unique marks are made by various manufacturing paraphernalia inside the barrel.
Yes, sir.
And and over time, other marks will come from the use of the gun.
Yes, sir.
All of which are considered by the forensic scientists to be unique
Yes, sir.
and capable, with used with a qualified expert, to match bullets with guns.
Yes, sir.
All right. And the KSP, Stephen Hughes, the forensic expert at our lab here in Frankfurt, did he examine those 2 bullets and attempt to see which of these 3 policemen may have fired those 2 bullets into BREONNA that caused her death?
Yes, sir, he did.
And what was his determination?
He could not distinguish between the 3 officers' weapons which one had fired those projectiles.
And I've used the term forensic because they are important forensic exams, ballistic
Yes.
work, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Is there a fair amount of subjectivity that necessarily is present in such an exam?
Yes, sir.
It's not like DNA.
No, sir.
All right. It's important though, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
But it doesn't have the same scientific certainty that DNA does.
That's correct.
All right. Now, later on, we've been talking about the FBI. They came out and worked on the scene as well.
Yes, sir.
Cooperated in other aspects of the investigation with you guys.
Yes, sir.
All right. And did they decide to take a look at these 2 bullets?
Yes, sir, they
There's three
did.
altogether, but let's concentrate on the two.
Yes, sir, they
And the
did.
two bullets I'm talking about are the one that caused her death in the upper left side of her chest, went down her lung, and the one right in here at her abdomen that you talked to the jury about
Yes,
a
sir.
little while ago. All right. And did they have the same kinds of tools I've talked about kind of generally?
Yes, sir. I believe they had the exact same type of microscope.
All right. And examiner equally qualified, the same as as Stephen Hughes at our
Yes, sir.
lab.
Yes, sir. FBI examiner.
All right. And we talked to that examiner at the FBI and the examiners at KSP.
Yes,
about
sir.
their findings. The FBI had a different result. Tell the jury what was their finding.
The FBI examiner, he was able to say that Detective COSGROVE fired the 2 rounds that were in Breonna Taylor's body.
Including the one that the medical examiner said caused her death.
That's correct.
In doing so, he looked and found, in his opinion, sufficient detail in the bullets recovered from her body to the test bullets he used for comparison purposes from the 3 policemen's gun, right?
Yes, sir.
In examining those, it was his judgment that they were fired by Costco, the 2 bullets in the torso of this brown. Okay.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
So to sum up, we don't necessarily have a conflict. We have the Kentucky State Police forensic examiner who's well qualified, right?
Yes.
You've worked with him, all of us have one time or another.
I'm not sure I've worked with him, but
Oh, okay.
Yes.
But essentially, he found there was inconclusive amount of similarity for him to make a call, there's a match.
That's correct.
And that's his subjective judgment, where some subjectivity enters into it.
Yes.
Some examiners are at times more aggressive than others in their attempts to match up bullets and guns. And using the same or similar equipment, the FBI person, their examiner, found that there was sufficient detail in his opinion to say Miles Cosgrove fired the 2 bullets, one of which killed Breonna.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
All right. I'm going to check with my colleagues here, make sure I haven't left anything out. Have I? I did? Oh, okay. We're going to, these are the trajectories that have been used several times, and they're marked 95 and 6. And therefore, you're on examination, and any questions you might have while we still have it. Let me check with my boss here. Okay, that's all I have, but we're here for any questions you might have of Detective Wolf.
I have a question. There was, we heard testimony that there was a bullet that went through the ceiling of apartment 4 through the apartment 8, I believe, above. Was that bullet recovered?
No, it was not.
Oh, okay.
There was 2 in Veronica. There were 2. Yes, sir.
2 bullet fire.
Yes, sir.
My question is on the spray. I'm looking for the directories that they're showing.
Yes.
It's like somebody or lots of people getting sprayed from that doorway. In other words, saying, I don't know, when 90 degrees or 80 degrees from one side to the other.
I think that's just the way they marked the trajectory points that they could identify. I don't think there's any significance to the markers. They just put those around to try to mark the different trajectories that they were pointing at. I think you see this area here is the beginning of pretty much all of the trajectories, which is pretty much right in the middle. That makes sense.
There's the one photo of the bullet that was covered. It looked like that trajectory marker was pointed up. Like from the floor up. No, that one. That's
machinery.
And where is that cover located in the, go back to the trajectory?
It's in,
Is that the?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, one of
There
those.
was one by the stove and one.
Well, they're showing us there's two.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is the FBI trajectory, that, the marker you saw, Louisville PD did their own, some of their trajectory analysis, we didn't use theirs, we used the FBI, so I think that's a different one.
But the pan
Would have been in one of those.
for the right of the sink.
Let's look at the picture. If I'm looking at number 86, it looks to me like it's in this.
Yes, and the picture shows, the director shows that it's on the right, but the picture shows it's on the left.
Right. And there again, there was, the little PD had done some trajectory stuff, and then the FBI came back in and did this sometime. So that, but yeah, right there is the.
Okay, yeah, they're right there.
So then the FBI trajectory for those two shots is off?
No,
It looks like
no,
there's
there's some,
two colors.
Right, they're gonna show anything.
if you look at these, if you look at these,
Right.
this one, you end up here in the back.
Where did it end up in the back?
They're not necessarily all on right here. That reflects. Yeah, okay, so this trajectory report is only ones that they can
Right.
confirm.
That they could identify.
So like the one that was like the one we were just referencing, right? That may not have been able to determine where that was coming from. So
If you look at that, that's only speculation on my part. When you look at the close-up on it, it's pretty big, pretty rough. Usually the ones they like to use are pretty tight. And that's just my speculation.
So, lady back here wants a question.
I reckon see that the projectiles from the front door go to the majority of them are out the hall of the sister's bedroom. 1, 2, 3, 4 projectiles that are marked there on that trajectory.
You see here, some go.
Just outside, keep going. Sister's bedroom.
Right there.
No,
Yes.
no, that's the sister's bedroom.
Right here.
Now, see there four.
These here you're talking about?
No, the ones in the hall, right?
Right there? Yes,
Yeah.
right now.
So that's the majority of where the bullets were found.
Right.
Found there. But there are only 2 against the wall that went all the way down.
Right.
To the wall. And what are those little short trajectories there? The one that goes into the wall, that one comes out, goes at right angle, goes to the sharp wall.
Yes,
And the
and
one-
I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure. But these here, if you remember, Walker's casing was
So
found right there.
it's just down a little bit. Before they're grouped together. And then
These
that
right here.
one little extra went down to the left, yeah, above C, above that. Could it possibly indicate where they exited her?
It's possible.
It could have been from same.
You made a good point. Some of those where they're marking things like in this hall are where they believe the bullet hit something and then continued on. Yes, sir.
the bullet that hit the tank commander that went through?
Yes.
Was everything?
Yes.
It was?
Yes, sir, it was, well, yes, it was alcohol. I apologize, I probably should have, I thought I made read that earlier, but exactly what the case were. I'll show you.
Yeah, but the word bullet that was in the hollow.
They were unable to determine closely what they KSP. I don't know, is it, yeah.
Well, they, the scene,
Right, 37. And that's the bullet. It had blood on it that they were sending to, I believe, to get comparison done on.
was it a straight shot or was it a downward shot or
If you look at the injury to his leg, it went in here and went pretty much straight through the throat. Yes, sir. So go back to the injury report.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Casing marker 42 was doing the hall markers from 30 right row. 42 was there. You said it came from Cosgrove's gun.
There was one that, a bullet that came from Cosgrove's weapon.
Yeah, down toward the end of the hall, there were 3 of them with this casing number, marker number 42.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that was actually where he was standing, where there?
No, that's the projectile. The casings were all out.
All the casing, there was a
Right,
projectile.
right, the projectile actually
Yeah,
pulled
there
apart.
was a projectile.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
He said it was a casing, that's why I was.
No, ma'am.
Walker's casing was there.
Walker's
Yeah, Walker's
casing,
casing, but
yes,
it's a
that's
marker
correct.
toward the front, yeah.
Questions?
Yes.
For the back hallway, the wall that
Has
on the opposing side of the closet, just to make sure I have it right, one of those was from Mattingly, and 2 of those 3 were from COSGROVE.
No, no, ma'am, one for me. Yeah, yes, sir.
So there are 3 shots. I think it was the other one.
Also, I've got an answer for you on your 40 caliber, 9 caliber. In March of 2020, the Glock 40 caliber was the official weapon with the police department. Mr. Lacey, you clarified that. And it's just a little bit bigger. It's pretty popular.
Yeah, I know there was different, it was just the difference.
Yeah, there was a time period about that time where everybody went from the 40 to the 9. So I said that's what we did the same thing.
You confirmed 5 shots from Mattingly?
6. We recovered 6. Six, there were 6 cases this time.
So 5 in front in the breezeway, and then the 1 in the wall.
Oh,
That'd be
Casey was.
Casey.
Was the other one inside the hallway?
One casing inside the hallway was just inside the door was yes, sir.
They were all in their inventory. First one.
6 casings and 2 projectiles. Yes, ma'am.
So what kind of gun did Mr. Walker get?
You had a Glock 43X, which is a 9mm.
43 L?
Yes, ma'am. It's a good gun. I've got one.
That's the one bullet that they had in the hollow.
I'm sorry, sir. You said it over time.
A Glock.
No, Mattingly.
A Magnum had 6 casings and 2 projectiles that we were able to come back.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Anything else?
I'm looking.
Yes, we got a question.
See the door, front door. What's that with
You want to see the front door?
the front door, wasn't the door through which Mattingly was hit when the Walker shot? Or was the door open enough to clear it? Yeah.
He had reached the door. The door was open.
The door was already, I got the feeling that the door kind of opened and sort of slowed back shut a little bit.
I'm not sure. This is the pictures, but they reached the door, which was reached, and then when he went in the doors, he was shut.
Walker said that as soon as that door gets running,
Yeah. Maybe when you do this, somebody has to be the first guy through the door. That's, you know, whoever's the first guy through the door is obviously going to be the guy that's in the most danger.
These photos may not represent exactly what at that moment, where the position of the door.
That's a good point.
Any other questions from the jury?
So we're going off the record.
All right, that will conclude part 7 of the release jury audio. This one in particular was about the Glock. I guess it's a 40 caliber Glock 22. Based on what you heard, if you was here through the duration, you heard that the officers all had Glock 40 caliber 22s. And the shot that was in the leg of Jonathan Mattingly was also from a 40 cal Glock 22. So if you're new over here to Black Minds News, we'd like you to subscribe, share, and all that other good stuff. And before we do get up out of here, yeah, we'll be doing some more lives. I got a little one back there. I got to get to that. But anyway, glad y'all came over here. Check it out again. I am the most hated show on the black corner of the internet. If y'all didn't know, they've been around since 2012. And make sure I keep it to about 50 views, 30 views. But I ain't in it for that. I'm here for the truth. Because again, the truth don't need no partner. And so again, the Black Minds News. This is your host, Mr. Blows Your Minds. Until my next show, y'all. Before we get up out of here, though, you know, we got to get him one more shot, right? We got to get him one more shot before we get up out of here, right? Y'all know who I'm talking about, right? So one more, then we be back up out of here. Peace, love, until the next show, y'all. Stay tuned.
What are you?
I'm black and beautiful.
What is your nationality?
My nationality is Afro-American.
Suppose I had some money in my pocket. Suppose I gave you $1 to say that you're an American Negro. This is money now. Money talks. Money talks. This dollar, and if you don't say it, you don't get it. You're an American Negro, aren't you?
No.
You won't have any money. You know you need money, don't you?
Yes.
You need money to live, don't you?
Yes.
All right. All you have to say, Leon, is that you're an American Negro. Aren't you an American?
If they wanted to make a assessment about different charges, they could have done that. But our recommendation was that Mattingly and Cosgrove were justified in their acts and their conduct.
One officer was charged with reckless endangerment for firing wantonly into the apartment, but the failure to charge anyone with killing Breonna Taylor has led to about a week's worth of protests here in Louisville. More than 200 people arrested and 2 police officers shot and wounded. Right now, the governor has said he has lifted the curfew and there are no plans to activate the National Guard. Harris, back to you.
Assessment about different charges. They could have done that, but our recommendation, different charges, they could have done that, but our recommendation, 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 recommendation.